Thank you. I'll try to be as fast as possible so that it will be fun and so that I could leave some time for questions and answers. I'll try as much as possible not to read from the screen. So you could enjoy what's written on the screen and at the same time listen to what I say, but let's just wait for it to become full screen. Yeah, perfect. All right, technology works. TMT Investments existed for 7+ years. We're a venture fund that invested in 45 startups at 11 exits. We have very high returns, 30% annual returns last year, and a lot of great portfolio companies. As a matter of fact, when we invested in our companies, the average valuation was 8 million, and right now the average valuation of the companies is over 50 million in the portfolio. So it's a very fast developing, very dynamic company. But what we're building is a crypto fund, and it worked, yay. And what we're trying to do is to actually help decentralized world become much more decentralized. What we're trying to achieve is not just help startups grow faster by providing not just money, but also connection, expertise, connection to other investors, connection to the key people they could hire, etc., and partnerships, distribution channels. But also we're trying to be nice to the investors. And going further down the presentation, I'll tell you how we're trying to do it. I promise not to read from the screen, but this one is the exception. There were lots of great startups in the 90s, but most of the people remember the failed startups. So you hear this all the time from people from outside of blockchain. They say, oh, but huge majority of this will fail. Yes, of course, they will, but there are lots of winners. And what we're trying to do is to find real winners who could advance the technology, who could help the society become more decentralized. So if you look at what's happening right now at blockchain revolution, you see that there are still so many fantastic opportunities, but the really big venture capital companies, the really big investors, they are missing this opportunity for many, many reasons. Not because they're not smart, but because a lot of them are concerned that these will not scale, because a lot of them do not believe that these will become really successful startups, and because some of them just do not see big business. They see some small group of guys coming up with what sounds like a good idea, but may not sound like a big business. We looked at it, and we really looked at it from the point of view of an iceberg. And the tip of the iceberg is what everybody sees, and they see, oh, it's an ICO, so they're raising 20 million or something. But what's under it are two very important components. One that is more clear, technology, creating decentralized database, creating a new way of storage, creating a new way of mining in the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. But what's very important is business. And what's very important is to realize that when you look at really successful startups, successful businesses, you're not just looking at successful technologies, but you're looking at successful business implementation of technologies, successful ability to sell. And whenever you talk to really good, really successful investors, the very key that to this investor success is not the ability to see a great technology, but the ability to see a great technology run by people who are able of selling. And by selling, I don't mean just selling to customers, although of course selling to customers as well, but I mean selling to the members of your team, selling to investors, selling to the press, selling to the public, selling to partners, selling to distribution channels. So basically what really great entrepreneurs do, and I don't know if you consider Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk great entrepreneurs, or Jeff Bezos, but they're great examples of salespeople, not necessarily sort of dirty, sleazy salespeople who are trying to sell anything that moves to anybody, but people who are able to communicate how some business could be beneficial. We really believe that businesses do not grow themselves. There is a funny saying, build it and they will come. That never works. Just because you build something does not mean that you're going to get customers. There are specific ways of turning your business, turning your technology into a successful business. And that is what we are trying to look for. And that is what we suggest to other investors. If you look at the opportunities that blockchain presents, which are clearly seen here, and the venture capital approach, on the one hand, you see very, very different approaches to things, right? But on the other hand, if you marry them, and this is self-explanatory, you could benefit from the advantages of both worlds, the old venture capital world and the new blockchain world. So that's what we thought we should bring in, the expertise in blockchain and technology and entrepreneurship, and also expertise in venture capital. And as a result, we hope to benefit from the... Anyway, so basically what I was trying to say with this fancy presentation is that there are some great blockchain technologies, but just because it's a great technology, it does not mean it's a great business. So an important function of a venture capitalist is to try to help companies, startups, become successful businesses. And where I left off was saying that venture capital has certain advantages, and blockchain and ICO technology approach have certain specific advantages. So what we're trying to do is to put together a fund that will be very different from all other venture funds. The way this fund, TMT CryptoFund, works is it invests $2 to $3 million in pre-ICO. So at a stage when a company is not yet fully done with the preparations for an ICO and private pre-sale, etc., but at a point when a company is only starting to consider it. It doesn't mean that it's a very young company. It very often actually means that it's a successful startup that thinks about a new technology, a new approach to blockchain. To give you an example, one of our portfolio companies has been very successful at virtualizing machines. So they have just come up with a new technology that virtualizes very powerful gaming machines. And you know that if somebody is a gamer and plays a lot of 3D and video games, it's typically a very powerful and rather expensive machine. But that machine on average is only used several hours a day. So what you could do is you could create virtual machines there, and then you can offer these virtual machines in the downtime to miners for mining. That way you can create actually a perfect market for mining in the cloud, right? Where there could be sort of like an eBay of mining facilities. So that's just one example of what of the kinds of companies we would look at. And last but not least, I think, since I'm pitching you, and I'd love to hear your criticism, of course, what we're trying to do is to be, nope, doesn't work. What we're trying to do is to be fair to investors. So what we will try to do would be to invest in both equity and tokens of pre-ICO companies. And then to our investors, first, we will give them certain percentage, something like 10% of all tokens that we get from companies for free, just simply to keep them happy. Then we will also exchange some of these tokens in exchange for the TMT tokens that our investors have. That way we can burn these tokens. And then thirdly, if there is a private pre-sale and the company agrees to offer us some discounted shares, a company we invested in, then we can also offer some of these discounted shares with certain hold rules to our limited partners or investors in the fund. So as a result, we give our investors first cash back as a percentage of all tokens that we bought just for free. Secondly, we give them cash back as in exchange for TMT tokens, which again is sellable and cashable. And thirdly, we offer them a rather quick, but not too quick, way to turn around discounted tokens that we oh, thank you. Okay, so I'm almost finished actually with, thank you, I'm almost finished actually with what I was saying. So that is the vision, to connect the blockchain and VC world, and we wanted to tell you a little bit about, I think I'm in the middle of one slide and another. So this is what we invested in over 60 companies. We sold our companies to a lot of well-known companies. We made a lot of very early blockchain investments in the likes of Shapeshift and Filecoin. Okay, last attempt. Thank you. Perfect. So we're very experienced. It's a good team. Those of you who were here for previous Bitcoin Wednesday, so Julian, he's a long-term blockchain investor of the last 5 years, made a lot of his investments. Artyom and German, my two partners, built a $1 billion company, RBC, and we have lots of very smart investors, founders of venture capital companies, people on board of Guardian, El País, a co-founder of Singularity University. So really people who have a lot of connections, have a lot of understanding of how business grows. Basically, I already explained in a few words what's the structure of the fund. Feel free to photograph the screen. It might be useful. It's rather self-explanatory. But basically, we're offering a whole bunch of cash outs to investors in the fund by giving, as I already said, giving some tokens for free to our investors, exchanging some of the tokens for TMT tokens, for the fund tokens, giving some private sale tokens to them, but also, since we invest in equity, there is a force cash out, which is traditional venture capital selling of the company. There are very self-explanatory advantages of investing. When you're a venture capital, you invest more money than a private investor. On average, we invest $2 to $3 million per investment, so you can get much better terms. You invest in very specific segment that you understand. You have analysts. You yourself spend a lot of time meeting with a lot of companies. Companies are very interested in giving you a special deal because they could go to other investors and say, hey, this big venture capital company invested in me. So there are certain advantages of your connections, of your weight, of the sound of the name of the venture capital, sort of unfair advantages that you could use. This is basically, just to repeat what we're trying to do. We already are doing this fund. It's a fund focused on several specific areas. It's a fund focused on a specific place where they're investing, typically in a company that already has business but is planning to blockchainize it. There are some thoughts here on what amount of tokens we will be getting. This to those interested in what a legal structure is like could be useful if you're thinking about a fund like that. Happy to discuss that as well. And we thought we would approach it in different stages. The stage where we offer tokenizer, a stage at which we're creating funds tokens, and also then a stage when we already have portfolio companies so that we can exchange tokens of the fund to the tokens of the companies. And then the third is basically, it's not so much the stage actually, it's more of a structure of returns. When we're selling some companies, when we're selling some tokens, and when we're exchanging some tokens. And some self-serving claims that funds like this would be successful because we have experience, we have connections, we invest a lot more money per check than a smaller investor, and because we have a very smart, very fair towards startups and towards investors in the fund structure. So all in all, well, these are legal disclaimers. So all in all, in conclusion, just to repeat my pitch, I think we're rather experienced entrepreneurs that built multi-million and multi-billion-dollar companies. We're very experienced investors that made many dozens of investments and had a lot of very successful big money exits. And we think that combining the best of the world of venture capital with blockchain, you can create a structure that helps companies a lot with early investments and with giving them money, connections, access to other investors, a lot of advice, a lot of help with providing your name as somebody who believes in them, but also very fair to investors in the fund because there are 4, as I discussed, cashable events for investors. So this is really the whole presentation. I hope I didn't bore you too much, especially with maybe inadvertently turning off the screen. Very happy to answer any questions. Thank you for listening. Much appreciated.